All right, welcome in. Very eventful day for the Dallas Cowboys as Cowboys cornerback Trevon Diggs arrived. He practiced and he updated both his status and Micah Parsons' status for us as well. A very significant update there. And speaking of Micah, the heat getting turned up on him. How will he react to what everybody is saying about the biggest and loneliest holdout in the NFL today? Let's do this, Jim.
The only thing else I got to say is, how about them Cowboys?
All right, welcome into How About Wow. I'm Gavin Dawson from 105.3 The Fan, and with me, as always, is the all-academic SEC lineman from Kentucky, New Bear Lesniewski. How the heck are you, buddy?
You called him the loneliest. 11 is the loneliest number.
Wow, that's crazy. I didn't even intend that, but I mean, he's lonely on the sidelines. And then today, both Cincinnati and Washington took care of their holdouts. So I think he is the last man standing in sort of NFL holdout department. And it's crazy. Washington felt like it was so important to get McLaurin in ASAP. They were talking about it 10 days ago. They finally get it done today. The Cowboys play 3 days earlier and still no urgency, New Bear. I do feel like we could wake up one of the next 2 days and hear that they're going to hammer out a deal because, it's time. And I think Micah really wants it and the team can't afford to have him sitting down week one.
What else could he possibly do at this point? I mean, he took a nap on the sidelines, right? What else could he possibly, short of coming with his own, 1980s style picket sign, not Kenny Pickett getting traded again, but literally I'm standing out here picketing and I'm a one-man band. Like, what else could he even do at this point? You said a few weeks ago that the only thing left for him to say is I refuse to play for these guys.
Yeah, it's time for action. Either you increase your intensity of your holdout with a demand like, hey, I'm not going to play for you guys ever, but we have an update on that. Or, the action that you can take right now is maybe, showing up and saying, I'm not talking about contract until February. Look me up in March or whatever. But now it's time to focus on football. And I really expect that press conference to happen over the next 48 hours. And of course, we'll be talking about it with you here on How About Wow. Go ahead, hit the like button, consider subscribing, and maybe even the bell so you never miss when we upload or go live. But we are going to start over here, my man, with Trevon Diggs passing his physical and has a chance to play week one. Just number one off the rip, dude. I think this is incredible because this now starts to present a path to beating good teams. If you can build a lead, turn the pass rush loose, and then Diggs and Bland playing together and their, ability to have between them double-digit interceptions and a half dozen pick sixes, over the course of a year. I just think that this is major. Even if he doesn't play week one, basically with them having activated him, it means they don't think he's going to miss any more than 3 games. Because if he was going to miss 4, they would have just started him on PUP or IR.
Yeah, Joe Mixon, fantasy football freaks. That's the first big name, right? In the breaking news from today, it was really exciting to not see him in that camp since he missed so much of camp. And quite frankly, when we were out in Oxnard, didn't look like he was due or ready to do much more than go camping. I mean, even on the great one that made some of the rounds where he made the full field run and Reggie Bush, front flipped on the pylon, he was exhausted. And I was talking a couple weeks ago about how he was pulling at his leg brace, and I felt like he was doing it to buy himself some time because he just wasn't quite right, let alone the ramp up to get back in shape.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things here with this story. I've highlighted this quote in here. I found this one to be really interesting because Shoddy having his players back maybe over the Joneses who were firing shots at Trevon Diggs rehab. You remember that from the offseason, and then at training camp, the Jones family opened it up with really a lot of shots fired at Trevon Diggs. Diggs has taken the high road, by the way, at every turn since then. So salute to him and his professionalism. But Shoddy saying at his presser yesterday, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about how hard Trayvon's been working. He's doing an incredible job with Britt Brown. These things don't happen if he's not putting in the time and the effort to do stuff that he's been doing. Really proud of him. I don't know if Jerry Jones could look at that as being disloyal to, the line of communication that Jerry's been putting out there. But I just love that Shoddy has his back. And even if Boss Man's a little offended by it, everybody on this roster is going to know it's us. Jerry's the business side. And I think it's very clear. No coach has really struck this right other than Parcells, who, by the way, it drove crazy. You know, nobody has struck it right since Jimmy on how do we create the culture and the family inside this bubble that Jerry Jones cannot penetrate. I thought that was an important next step for Shoddy.
Yeah, this is also the Hansel and Gretel breadcrumbs toward welcoming Micah back into the fold, because we're able to say, hey, man, whatever you've been through, however many cameras were watching every Bosu ball, leg raise, or everything you were doing back at home instead of being here, and the fines and everything withstanding, when it's go time, let's go.
Yeah, let's go. And let's go to the next angle in this conversation. We go to Nicole Hutchinson. She's been doing great work covering this football team. Here she is with the picture there of Trevon Diggs. But the really important thing is him talking about how ready he is, right? If he's 100% ready and you can get him against Philadelphia, that would be some of the best injury luck really we've gotten since Tyler Guyton's ACL scare. But on the odds of him taking the field against Philly, I think I need a couple of practices to see where I'm at, just going full speed. He says he feels really good. He's going to stay here and continue to work and just try to make it at least the first go. I'm not quite sure what he meant by that, but the question I want to ask you, New Bear, is number one, do Cowboys fans or media owe him an apology for getting back here and even being close to playing week one, coming back from this injury? And then after that, and it's a completely separate branch by itself, but are we pushing him? Is he pushing himself too much? Are the Cowboys willing to let him push himself because of all the time that he's missed and the adversarial nature of this relationship? I just don't know, based on what we've seen with the short videos that he's posted, that I think it's that realistic. Diggs is actually ready to go, like we know Trevon Diggs is. I think this is a continuing of his rehabilitation, if anything.
Yeah, the first question that I have going into any of this is, how much is he actually going to play when he is ready, and what does that look like? Because if he's really back and he's on a ramp and he's playing, let's just say 50% of the snaps, and he's going to play 30, 35, 38 plays, and there's a hard cap, like a rookie pitcher or a pitcher coming off Tommy John, to make it more one-to-one, where you start talking about what that injury really does to impact the way you play. Is he playing off and soft, or is he playing bump and run? And then are we monitoring his next gen stats to the point where it's not a plays, it's about the miles run, the miles per hour. And when he hits a certain threshold, we shut him down and save the player from himself. Because when you get ramped up, adrenaline, juices start flowing, you feel good. You want to keep going while you feel good, because it might not feel the same tomorrow. And with delayed onset muscle soreness, stiffness, swelling, and all the things that are going to come from week to week. So the first part for me is, what does this look like, whether it's week one or from week 1 through 18? And then that dovetails
real quick. What we're hearing from Brian Broaddus's sources in the G-Bag Nation is that really it comes down to conditioning right now, which kind of speaks to his snap count. And is that cardio conditioning, or is that muscles being conditioned and ready to fire? If it's just cardio, then you play him till he's tired. But if it's more than that, I really think they should be very conservative, considering the possibility of a soft tissue injury that could, take him out for longer. So I would honestly look at this like the best case scenario would be Trevon Diggs at some point this year playing at 100% and being in a good position to continue his career in 2026.
Yeah, so that's a great point relative to the ramp and relative to the first question that you asked, which is, does Cowboys Nation, does NFL Nation owe this guy an apology? And I would say that is TBD, not yet, because it happened after week 18. Right now, he's past a physical. Right now, we haven't seen him get rolled up on. Right now, we haven't seen him stick his face in the fan. Right now, we haven't seen him run more than, non-padded, right, since he's been cleared. And now he's going to go out there and chase big guys and little guys and get hit by everyone in between. How does he respond to that? Because if we're talking about, IR at some point later in the year and shutting it down because of soft tissue or something worse emerging, then he owes us an apology. It's the other way around. But if he is able to return to form at any point, especially in the back half after the bye, ramping up through that week 12 through 17 gauntlet, setting up a NFC East showdown, setting up a playoff run, and he's back to being, he's the best, he's got 7 on his chest, then yeah, and we'll probably do a little special promo for him.
Yeah, and I would say Jerry at that point would, you make a great point though. What's it going to look like when the real bullets start flying? He was not a great patient coming off the ACL, and I think that's really what got it started. So if you did manage to rehabilitate yourself this offseason better than you would have around the star, then I would say yes. Everybody who said something negative about Trevon Diggs, maybe owes yourself at least updating this story. But going back into 2024 and that round of physical therapy, it's almost like this offseason was an acknowledgement things didn't go well that first time around, and now I got to try to make things right. So, I guess all's well that ends well, and if you have to go through that kind of experience to make yourself the absolute best version of yourself, I think that's very human. We can all relate to that. I just hope that the Cowboys and Diggs aren't pushing himself back so much because of this injury is not something that suggests 9 months later you should be good to go. And especially if you add in the fact that last year's came after the ACL, immediately the next following season, boom, hurt again. I would be dragging this thing out, to at least 12 months, which is what the WebMD will tell you. You got to go 12 months on this.
I think Mother Nature is going to do that for us because we're going to see in just the first 5 weeks alone, I think 4 different playing surfaces, right? You're going to see Bermuda grass. You're going to see Kentucky bluegrass. You're going to see different types of turf. And if he goes out there and it's a bit slippy, or we've seen it before in Chicago where there's like a Metallica concert, they got to resod the field and a little bit of rain wreaks havoc on that. And you're talking about a guy who's learning how to trust himself again to go all out. How does that feel if he's got to change cleats? How does that feel if he feels a little grab in the hamstring? And does this play out? Does this drag out week to week based on any number of factors?
All right, next branch in our topic tree here on How About Wow. Hope you're enjoying the podcast. If you can hit that like button, we sure would appreciate it. He was asked about Micah Parsons and said Micah wants to remain with the Cowboys despite that trade request. Very significant update. Says most definitely he wants to be with us and help this team win. This is his home and family. I think if you're Micah and his agent and you're looking at this, if you thought, your holdout was working in any way, shape, or form, it's over. Like Shoddy saying he believes you're going to be there. Dak saying he believes you're going to be there. Best friend after practice is saying that trade request, that was just kind of a thing. When he said he doesn't want to be a Cowboy forever, he really didn't mean that. Like you got to end this holdout ASAP, if for no other reason than you've lost any credibility on it. Nobody believes you anymore.
Well, I think the last time we talked, I said, where the hell's Dak at in all this? So it's nice to see D4K coming to the PR game and doing what he does with it, which is send subliminal messages about as well as everyone as part of, building on what Diggs has said. And for Diggs to be his best friend and not just say, yeah, he wants to be here. Yeah, he's working out. Yeah, he wants to play. But things like this is his home. Like they're talking to him the same way coaches do to send a message like, yo, bro, knock this shit off. Let's go.
I love it. Yeah, we got it. It's time to do it. We're all going to do our business. Jerry's a pain in the ass for all of us. Don't think you're special and that nobody likes you and you can get in your feelings and just not play football for us. You're our only chance, and you're getting $24 million. Let's freaking go get to practice.
You talked about how's Diggs going to look when the bullets start flying. How about we stop shooting ourselves in the foot, Micah Parsons? How about we stop doing things that make, if you're going to do what you're doing, you have every right to. You're worth it. We said you should get paid, and somebody is going to pay you probably twice before you turn 30. It's going to happen in Dallas or somewhere else, and we're going to be talking about it no matter where you are. You're that good. Put your jersey on, put your hands in your hoodie, sit there and clap when you get a first down and when you get a touchdown, pat dudes on the butt when they come off the field, when they need a little pick-me-up. Be the humble lion.
It's freaking Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones, dude. They will cave. You are getting all of your money. I think the only thing that could stop that from happening right now is a bad season, or you getting hit with the reputation of you're a me first guy at every turn, which by the way, you probably are, or injury, which not being in training camp probably makes more likely that you suffer some sort of an injury trying to explode. And you don't want to be going 2 years in a row coming off injuries that cost you a quarter or more of the season trying to negotiate a contract. So,
yeah, I mean, let's not forget too, we talk about all the guys who were picked ahead of him or all the guys in his draft class who then re-signed.
Yeah.
It's not even 3 weeks that Slater went down. The very next guy, right? If Micah was 12, Slater was 13, right? And that dude is done for the year, and he's going to have a long road back relative to you're talking about a patellar. I mean, that's more traditional, more old school than the modern microfracture stuff that we're talking about with Diggs. But for a big man, for bend, right? Like all it takes is one play, and the more time away, the more impact every play that you has or every play that you have has on your body to come back.
You know, I think sometimes Jerry Jones, the words and his actions over the years have been reprehensible. I don't think trying to negotiate with the player who's got an agent is an ethical thing to do. I think, you know, as a dad and as a girl dad, you know, not to get too much into his personal business, but it's just an embarrassment and a moral abomination what Jerry Jones has done. But both sides can be held accountable and can be critiqued through this whole deal. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come correct, because I was going pretty hard on Micah there. You know, I think right now, you know, if you're just putting yourself in Micah's shoes and like, how do you reconcile all this and have a good attitude? It's like, what can you control? Right. And what is in your best interest? And right now you've reached a point in the holdout where it is in your best interest to send a message to the team and to get ready. I mean, we have 9 sleeps until Cowboys Eagles. There's not a whole lot of time left. Okay, that's a good segue into some Micah Parsons content here for you on How About Wow. Again, hit that like, hit that sub. We sure would appreciate it. Help us get some momentum going into the regular season and get your $250 in bonus bets on Bet Online. The link is in the description there. So stay with me on this just a little bit, my man. My theory is the Heat maybe unintentionally getting turned up on Micah from one of his former teammates and one of his current teammates. Okay, so that's sort of my premise on this. Tell me if I'm off or you think I'm cooking a little bit. Okay, leave a comment down below. We'd love to interact with you. Dak on Micah resolving his dispute with the Cowboys and being on the field for the season. Quote, I've got confidence. I told y'all way back when. I'm just going off of experience. Honestly, it's no different than mine. I've got confidence in that. So I don't know what's going on in Dak's mind as he is saying this, right? But one way you could interpret that is if Micah holds out, it's super selfish because Jerry Jones does this to all of us. And you got to be a man about it and be there for your brothers. What do you think, New Bear?
Yeah, I mean, I jumped the gun a little bit on this. I apologize. You mentioned Dak, and I was just so excited to talk about him, you know, being at the camera, being at the podium level to speak on this, because I thought it was going to happen earlier. I thought he was going to try to turn the pressure up on his teammates to get everyone together because of everything that's at stake for him. You remember he made that legacy quote, you know, damn for my legacy, right? Damn for this. I want to win and bring a Super Bowl, because it's the only thing he doesn't have, right? Walter Payton, Man of the Year, All Pro too. Like, they got all these individual accolades on and off the field, but they've never won any of them. Right? 30 years since the Super Bowl, but none of these guys have even been to a conference championship game together. You're talking about winning a playoff game would be a huge step forward, where people are throwing parties and rioting in the streets, right? About running it back, regardless of how bad it looks, if they could get it done and get some run going into just whatever the next round is. And so I really thought this was going to happen earlier. And then I took a step back and said, you know, I think Dak is probably just going to take the high road, like you talked about Diggs doing now, and let this thing play out. And then when it's his time, when it's his turn, he's going to speak on it. And she's not going to come out and say anyone is wrong or anyone is right. But what he is going to say is that I've gone through this. CD's gone through this. You're a super duper star. You're going to get paid, like you said. Stop being a baby.
Yeah, it sucks. We get it, you know, and the way that Jerry can turn the knife and use his savvy with the media and use his negotiation skills, he's got a big advantage against you. I think one of the things that Dak and other players have done so well is completely ignore it. Like, that would be my best advice. Do not engage with Jerry. Do not pay attention to what he says to the media. Take Twitter off your phone. Put your head in the sand and you know, practice and work, and let your agent inform you when the deal is done. I think that's really, and CeeDee Lamb talked about it at camp. Remember that clip where he's like, I don't advise it. You know, it's not a good idea because that's Jerry's world in every single way. Maybe Micah thought he could roll like that because he's the big successful podcaster at Bleacher Report. You know, maybe he thought, I want to test my mettle against the GOAT of media manipulation and business negotiation. I mean, that'd be thrilling. It'd be like playing poker with Doyle Brunson. You know, you're like, holy cow, I get to match wits with the GOAT here. I'm a rookie out here on the World Series of Poker Tour. But yeah, you know, I do think that this negotiation needs to get done as quickly as possible. And maybe I'm reading too much into it with Dak's words, but let's go. Okay, so let's go to Tank Lawrence here. Now, this is a former teammate, and it was well established when Tank was here that he and Micah did not see eye to eye on stuff, and at times it leaked into the media. But here was Tank Lawrence there now with the Seattle Seahawks on the Pivot Podcast with Ryan Clark.
If you were in Oxnard for the last 3 weeks, or what would be Dallas now, we all see from the outside what's going on with your former teammate, your former team. What would be advice you could give to Micah Parsons as he now deals with trying to figure out how he handles his contract negotiations?
That's a shaky situation, man. You have an owner on one hand that's basically asking him to go prove it and, play another year. But, you got a young star on the other hand. It's like, I already done proved enough to you. You got to pay me my money. So, I mean, it's really hard to, speak on it, because, with my situation, Jerry franchise tagged me the first time, and he was like, shoot, if you can prove it under this franchise tag, I'll pay you. So I was like, all right, cool. That's basically double dipping to me. You know what I mean? I get the franchise in, money on the back end. So, all right, cool. I go prove it. Did that. And he was a man of his word. He paid me, So it's like, I don't know what was said behind closed doors with their situation. Right. So, I can't just say like, pay that man or, don't pay that man. It's that's their business. Yeah. You feel me?
Because it seems like two.
Okay, that's their business. Okay, so to me, New Bear, he was saying, well, it's really hard to speak on it. And then he explained why, as a team player, he had no problem with it and thought it was sweet what Jerry Jones was offering.
Yeah, this is tough. This is tough for a couple of reasons, because you can argue it very, very straightforwardly and say, well, the Bengals, who are arguably the cheapest team to ever do it, just pulled $14 million forward for a guy who's way older than you, who hasn't done half of what you've done. And he's going to be a free agent again next year, but let's call that meeting in the middle. And then there's the other side of it where you talk about CeeDee Lamb and what he did say about not wanting to do it the way that Micah ultimately has, or Dak being a guy who waited even longer than Micah has so far, kind of shots fired a little bit. And Micah, you could say Micah has every right because he's outperformed the history of the league at his position. So
absolutely.
If not this guy, and if not now, then when? Like looking at him, and you and I got into this a couple weeks ago where we talked about, what is it, like 85/3 if they franchise him twice, and why would he risk that for the $200+ million that's out there from someone else? And I start thinking about guys like Le'Veon Bell. I start thinking about guys who let 1 year get in the way of a gold jacket, let 1 year get in the way of not just one helmet guy, but legacy wherever you go, because you're not the same guy. And that's where we're at. That's the crossroads that this is. And if we're going to talk about CeeDee Lamb last year at all, let's also remember what Dak said in Oxnard about how much freer and better he's playing, how much more comfortable he is to be in the leadership position to take on George Pickens, because they finally ultimately came correct, did right by him. And even in doing so, did not make him the highest paid, did not, put him in a position where it wouldn't be easy for a Jamar Chase, a Justin Jefferson, even a DK Metcalf to be on that Mount Rushmore with him. So it's business. It's tough. And whatever side you take, there's going to be a litany, a legion of trolls that are ready to just pour gas on the fire the opposite way.
Yeah, I would say as a star, at some point you have to be selfish, and especially if you're on a team in the Bengals situation or in the Cowboys situation where they're going to negotiate hard. And I think if you don't negotiate hard, they're going to absolutely take you to the cleaners. Like, look at the contracts that actually do get done early from the Cowboys, and they're usually between 20 and 30% below the market value. I mean, Diggs got done early and he was $19 million. Before you even blinked, cornerbacks were getting 25 to 30. So you could argue like he's making 60 to 70% of the money at the top of the market right now. Osa, market value $28 million, gets around 20. So if you want to get what you are worth, these tactics are needed. And Tanks was not a peaceful negotiation either. Like, Stephen Jones and his agent famously mother bleeped each other at the combine in front of a bunch of reporters and half the league. They were watching as this went down very publicly. So, Dax, the Cowboys were really unwilling to do anything until Dak this last off season was about to start a season that at the end of it he would be an unrestricted free agent, and then and only then did they do that deal. So I think the point the players are making is that what Micah is going through is nothing that, being a Cowboy, a star player is foreign at all. You look at America's team. Emmitt Smith did it. Michael Irvin, big portions of that docuseries, the El Paso story and the holdout story. Like, this is just the way Jerry Jones has done it for years. And if you think you're special, maybe you don't really appreciate being a Cowboy, or you don't know who you're dealing with exactly.
In real life, in the real world, you have to leave. And in my generation, geriatric millennial was really the first one where, the old generation would say these kids aren't loyal. Because every 2 or 3 years, you look at resumes and people are popping around and they're going from Adobe to Apple to Google to Amazon to Walmart, what have you, right? Pick a marketing communications agency, whatever it is that does the things that the Pepsis and the Doritos and the Tostitos and the Volvos and the Cadillacs do. That's how the world has worked for the 20 or so years that I've been working in it. And it's only more recently with, generations inside of generations from Z to Alpha, Beta, what have you, where it's really become accepted, and COVID really exacerbated all that stuff. Micah's a child of these times. Micah doesn't understand how everyone else could come to the ball and get whatever the hell it is that they need or want or desire, and he's the last one standing. The music stopped. There's no chairs left. It's easy to understand. It's easy to empathize with where he's at, just like it's easy to look at the brass taxes and the bottom line and the franchise tag and the rules being what they are and go through the machinations of that. It's really, really hard. And what I think this comes back to is the brothers' tweet from the middle of the summer and the guaranteed money. Because if you go back and look at CeeDee Lamb's contract, while he wasn't the highest paid, he got the biggest bonus for a wide receiver, if I remember correctly. And when you go back and you look at some of these guys like TJ Watt, he got $108 million guaranteed, but it's really only a 3-year contract. Team has an out in the 4th year if he suddenly falls off a cliff. So you can look at AAV, you can look at total value, you can look at guaranteed on signing, total guaranteed dollars. What's the damn sticking point?
Well said, New Bear. Okay, up next here on How About Wow, Micah Parsons' antics during preseason finale spark controversy, fuel Cowboys contract drama. This is on Fox. Fox News doing a story about it. Just hilarious. He's laid out.
I died this is insane.
It is. And it wasn't for that long. Like Mike Leslie verified or clarified, I guess would be the right word, on Twitter shortly after. He wasn't lounging the entire game, but just the fact that it happened for a brief moment, it was captured. It's not a good look. But I'll tell you what I appreciate about this is when Micah does his podcast or does his media availability, he's very engaged and enthusiastic. This is the real Micah, and the fact that he's alone, we talked about at the practice last Thursday, he's almost always alone. The fact that he didn't want to hang out or be engaged in the game at all and went and laid down, I think fans got to see part of what Jerry Jones is talking about when he's asking for more engagement and better leadership. I don't know how you could say you want to be a team captain and the leader of the defense if this is in your bag even for 5 seconds during a game.
Especially when you're talking about guys who are out there fighting for their NFL lives. This is cut down game. This is the last chance for these guys to even have a chance to be like you in any way, shape, or form, to share a locker room, a practice field, to get elbow to elbow and hip to hip with your greatness, and you're not out there rooting for these guys. This might be the last time they ever put on a helmet and shoulder pads. I mean, it's just a bad look. And the ball, they're kicking ass. They're lighting people up. They're picking balls off. Like, it's game 3 preseason, but there was fascinating, exciting, interesting stuff going around. And these are supposed to be your guys, to your point. If you want to wear the C, you're going to get treated differently. And like when Tom Brady's breaking tablets, everyone wants to come to his defense. They want to say one of two things. He's the most competitive guy, that's why he wins, or he's an asshole, and that's why he wins. When you do it the other way and you give people, this rope to pull and you give them the room to do so, they're going to yank it all the way to the other side. They're going to paint you into a picture where you look like a kid, like my kids at wherever we take them, that they need a backpack leash so they don't get loose in the store because we can't trust them at all. He's acting like a child.
It is. It's not a good look. It's definitely not a professional look. And hopefully this right here means he's bored to tears. He's ready to play because it's time to end the holdout. It really is. Coach, Dak, Diggs, they're not buying it. They're not buying that you're legitimately going to sit out games. And if that's the case, then you have no leverage. Right now, your leverage is I'm not going to play for you. And unless you're willing to say that, then I think you're actually going backwards. And now the narrative is starting to turn against you.
Yeah, I mean, I was arguing with you probably throughout the lot of this. And you can say most, and that could be 51% or more. I would say the vast majority of this, I've been on the player's side in as much as if it's not production, if you're measuring product, question anything about Micah Parsons, because even where you look at him and PFF might not like him as much, the team is the worst in the league when he's not on the field and one of the best by metrics, even in the areas that we don't like him as much. There's just objective ways to break this thing down and say, if not now, if not this guy, then who and when? And then you take a step back and you go, well, how much do all these other things add up to it? Because Dak, the haters want to talk about how he's fake and he's PR and he's towing the company line and he got paid so he doesn't have to take any more chances. He's worried about his legacy forever. Damn what he says when you put a microphone in his face. And CeeDee Lamb is a guy who's still on the rise, still making the highlights, who got paid, and it now has an opportunity to take that to another level. And all you're seeing is him growing and developing as a player and a person. So that's what we focus on. When you put this stuff out there in the limelight, whether it's for 2 minutes, 20 minutes, the whole game, whatever, then you can't clap back at the people who use this as a framework for how you're handling the conversation the wrong way.
Great stuff, New Bear. We got cut down day tomorrow. We're expecting Mozzie Smith to be on the team. That's pretty insane. Scooney on the team. Fairweather and Stevens out. Maffa goes on IR today, has another shoulder issue. It's not the same shoulder that had to be operated on. It's a different one. So hopefully, that doesn't linger too long, but he'll miss at least the first month of the season. And eyes peeled for James Houston News. The dude's just an absolute blur off the edge. Are they going to be able to find room to keep him if they want to keep Mozzie? And, it comes down to a numbers game. And I guess the good news is you have a lot of talented pass rushers that are options. But I thought Houston was a great find and a guy that you'd want to make sure you wrap your arms around and keep for at least a couple of years till he hits free agency. 8 sacks as a rookie, injured foot, looks to be like he's finally healthy.
Yeah, he looks fast. He looks loose. Like he looks like he trusts his whole body, like we hope Diggs will be able to do in the coming weeks. And I mean, really with cut down day, with some of the contracts that did get signed, some of the moves that are being made based on injuries, availability, guys who are changing and ultimately paychecks. This is one of the most fascinating things as we get into it, where people are starting to circulate. What's your favorite meme or a gif of a player that's been in the stands in week one in a holdout when you do start missing game checks and taking it that far? Chris Jones or Bell or whomever it is, and like if it gets to that, Is that better for you, Micah, or is that better for you, Jerry, in terms of potential trade value? Because if you're not going to get this deal done now and have this potential nucleus that has guys coming back, that looks young and fast, that, oh, by the way, with all the Diggs talk, you know who we didn't say anything about, how good Diggs being healthy would be for Kaiir Elam. How good Diggs being healthy would be for Revel, for them to take their time with that kid coming off an ACL. All these things are multiplier effects. Micah Parsons, the biggest force multiplier with a star on his head, nowhere to be seen unless he's pouting.
Yeah, you're right about that, man. And it would be amazing if you had the option of moving Bland inside. Like, you got a problem since you let Jordan Lewis walk out that door and go to Jacksonville. Who's going to be in the slot? I mean, Bland gives you the coverage, the toughness, the play off the edge if you want to blitz. Like, DaRon Bland solves a lot of problems for you if you can move him into the slot. Okay, back soon with more content. Till then, how about wow?